Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the next to final week, but the final week for almost everybody except two players. We had our playoff, relegation, and promotions, as well as the semifinal matchup in the championship finals. I am Zotomo, and I'm joined as always by Calamity. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. How are you?
Very nice. And our guest this week is Division Two's Gweilowizard, who was in a relegation matchup himself this week, so we'll see if he managed to survive in Division Two. How are you doing?
Doing well, despite the outcome, shall we say.
Well, don't spoil too much for us
He
quite
did
yet.
not survive, he's dead.
Yeah, so let's just start then with the championship finals, the semifinal matchups. Boxa and Raidman looking to return to the finals, and as we look at these scores, Guelo, they certainly will do that with not only winning but having the two best scores on the map.
Yeah, decent scores. I mean, we should expect this. This is kind of a recurrent theme in Reddit League, but pretty solid performances from both. I'm trying to find where Pluki's mistake was. It was in round 3. Oh yeah, there was a Pennsylvania round that people had trouble with, both Pluki and Orpheus, which felt bad for me as that's where I'm from, but I didn't get it either. So
You know, we played Pennsylvania. What was it? Season
I think it
two?
was season two, yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't exactly the easiest thing to do. So I can understand how that would happen for sure. But yeah, probably how he would have thought things would have turned out. But yeah, Calamity Orpheus after last season's semifinal performance wanted to do a bit better and didn't quite pull that off. The lowest score again.
Yep, unfortunate. Just not quite on the level on that day. It was, I mean, kind of a few rounds where he'd already lost too many points to compete with Raidman. Round 2 in Ghana, he dropped about 200 points or so, and then in Pennsylvania, he dropped another 1,000, I think. I did actually, in the Pennsylvania round, I found signs for Greensburg, and I was like, I remember that. I didn't remember from where, and in the end, I didn't get it either. But I did just about manage to put it in Pennsylvania. But then it was a round in Indonesia that cost Orpheus the most points. It wasn't an easy round. I didn't get it at the time. But, I mean, you can believe me on that or not, but I had the feeling it was very far east, potentially Timor. I just didn't put it there. And I later on saw that there was actually a sign mentioning the city that was closest, not too far from the start. I think about maybe a kilometer north, maybe even slightly less. But it was very small on the sign, so you would have had to look at the sign specifically and check that to see, which I guess Boxer, Raidman, and Pluki did. I don't know if maybe it was written somewhere else as well. But that obviously cost Orpheus almost 3,000 points and ruined any chances he had. And Pluki did pretty well, and he would have even had a decent chance if it weren't for that Pennsylvania round. I think even in the other rounds, he was slightly too far off to pull out a win. He dropped 41 points in the other rounds as well, which, yeah, obviously, as we can see, that box only dropped 21 in total. But he came very, very close, and definitely a respectable performance for him.
Yeah, Orpheus did make a little bit of a complaint. He said, you know what, this street view, I don't know, apocalypse that some players are calling it, that we're in, where just a lot of movement is messed up in certain places and things. He's like, it just really got to him. Probably didn't really have the mindset, or not in the right mental state to really put up too big of a score in the semifinals. So that's a bit unfortunate that we have that kind of problem. But you know, that's what we're dealt with. We got to make the best of it. So yeah, a bit unfortunate for him after 2 seasons of making that semifinals, not really able to show what we've got. So yeah, sorry, we have a repeat of, oh my God, Calamity, the last 3 seasons in a row between these two. Raidman took the first one, Boxa took the second, and we're going to see who comes out of this one and breaks that 50-50 tie. And I believe they both chose the exact same maps. as last time. So Boxa picking Germany, Raidman lowers Silesia, and then of course AI General World as the decider. So for the championship, Guelo, what do you think?
It's a tough choice. Obviously, they're 1-1 on championship so far, although last year it was due to a misclick by Raidman, or an alleged misclick. But it's going to be tight. Box has looked really good this year. He's got, I think, 8 wins and 1 tie. And Raidman's only loss as well was from the Russia round where he declined to play. So they've both been really strong. I think I have to choose Boxa, but it's not an easy decision. Obviously, they're the 2 best players, kind of pretty decisively. So it's going to be tight regardless of how it goes.
Yeah, Calamity season 3 was very close affair. Season 4, obviously, as Guelo mentioned, that misclick costing Raidman. But yeah, are we going to see our first back-to-back champion? We've had a new person every season, but we have a chance at least of a returning champion and maybe a back-to-back.
It will definitely have a second champion, so to speak, a repeat champion. And yeah, they've been a bit boring in their map choices, picking the exact same as last time. I mean, I guess for Box it worked last time, and Raidman probably wants to sort of get revenge for what happened last season, so it does make sense in a way. The one thing that did change actually from last season, I'm pretty sure at least that happened between last season and this season, is that the AI generated world actually got changed to be handpicked. Not exactly sure how Roland Hill did that, if he just went through each location one by one and changed it to somewhere else, but it's slightly different now. I haven't played it too much. I've played a couple of seeds for creating obviously the semifinal and the final seeds, and I have noticed that I don't know about difficulty specifically, but I've noticed that at least all of the locations seem pretty fun in a sense. And what I also didn't mention in the semifinal seed is that it wasn't like, they got 5Ks every round and maybe Box and Raidman lost a few points in one round. There were a few rounds, like neither of them 5K round 1, Boxer didn't 5K round 3 or 5, and Raidman didn't 5K round 4. So all of the location proved somewhat difficult and interesting, but still doable, which I think is really cool. And I hope the final seed proves similarly cool. And yeah, it's really difficult to tell or make out a favorite between those two. They're really close to each other on their level, and I think it may well just come down to basically a few seconds, even potentially, where on some seeds they might both get perfect scores, and then it'll just come down to who'll be a bit faster, which I think gives a slight advantage to Boxer. But Germany and Lower Silesia are both maps that are generally relatively easy. But they can have difficult rounds. Like we all know, Poland sometimes puts you in the middle of nowhere where you can go 3 minutes without really getting anything great. At most, maybe like a town name that, I mean, in Lower Silesia, it's not the biggest, so maybe you can find that in the time, but that makes it even more tricky, because then you're like, well, what do you do after 2 minutes? You've got a town name and you're not sure if you should continue. Like if it's all of Poland, you'd be like, well, I gotta continue. There's no chance I'll find that town. But in Lower Silesia, you might. So that adds another interesting element to it. But yeah, in total, I think it could very much depend on, as we always say, on the seeds, on their form, and could easily go either way between the two.
Of course. Well, good luck to them. Hopefully we'll be able to bring that one to you in its entirety next week. Well, moving on then to the opposite side of Division 1 in the relegation match. And it was you, Calamity, who came out on top in a 2-1 win over Verdok in this one. Yeah, Guelo, is this kind of what you expected from this matchup, or are you a bit surprised?
I think this is what I expected. I think Calamity's, well, I guess this is the first time they've been in the same season. But I think my impression of Calamity is that he's a slightly better player than Wardok, although I haven't played against Wardok, I don't think ever, actually, and at least in Reddit League. But what surprises me is the differences in these scores. Like I think the lowest score differential is about 1,000 points in Poland. The other victories for Wardok and Jordan in Europe for Calamity were by quite large margins, which is pretty unusual. I think most of the other relegation and promotion matches were much closer. So maybe it was just the seeds, but it's these are not small margins for Division One.
Yeah, Calamity Verduck actually improved on his regular season performance in general, and you were a little bit under your regular season performance, but those very strong performances in Poland, Europe, still enough for you to carry the day.
Yeah, I think it's hard to, compare like the scores on a map from the regular season to the playoffs and, to from one seed to another, unless there's like a really big difference, like 5K to 25K. But yeah, in general, I think it's mostly down to the seeds that you see such big differences. I was relatively confident about Poland and Jordan to begin with. And Poland went really well. I played that last actually, so I was slightly annoyed by the other two seeds, and in sort of I play slightly better when I'm in that mode. So I didn't really worry too much. Just played the seed, and it ended really well. There was one round where it could have almost gone completely wrong, where it was in sort of or next to a castle in Krakow, and it was difficult to get out of that coverage because you had to jump from one road to another, and it took me about a minute and a half until I managed to get out of it, which didn't really leave me with much time, and I absolutely hate Polish cities. Big cities, like smaller cities are completely fine. I like those, but big cities, I really struggle to find out which city I'm in. For some reason, I don't know why, but I guess it's an information overload of useless information. So I can't find any useful ones. But I did make my way to a bridge in the end. And once I was like, okay, there's a river here, there's a castle, and I saw signs to a lot of other big cities, but that gave me some I could exclude. And I found the right place with like 10 seconds left, and couldn't quite pinpoint anymore. That's where I lost my 1 point. But yeah, got saved by finding it just in time. And Verdok dropped about he dropped a few points in quite a lot of the rounds. I dropped 10 points in round 2, 1 point in round 4, 60 points in round 5. But his main problem was round 1, which was in sort of the outskirts of Warsaw in a town called Wolomin, where he already dropped about 850 points. Couldn't quite figure out where we were, and guessed sort of in northern Warsaw. And that pretty much ended his chances. And then Jordan, I choked round 1 completely, which very much annoyed me. The rest of the seed was fairly easy as well, which didn't help. I just dropped another like 12 points in Amman, just finding the right road slightly too late. And Verdok, yeah, did a pretty decent job there. Again, only one ace, but in the rounds he didn't quite get, he was close enough. And then in Europe, it was pretty even until round 5, where I dropped 14 points in the first round in Switzerland, just again finding the town slightly too late. And Verdok had perfect scores for the first 4 rounds, and then round 5, Ukraine, which I don't think anyone wants to see when playing Geoguessr in an important match in the last round, and not even like urban Ukraine, but like middle of nowhere Ukraine as well, which is just not something you want. And neither of us managed to find it, but Verdok apparently he didn't realize it was Ukraine, and he saw something, I think he said, where it said Don, and he thought maybe we're near the Don River in Russia, and we were not, and that saved me in that one, I suppose. I guessed somewhat central in Ukraine, and with him in the wrong country there meant that I came out on top.
So Ukraine, perhaps your new favorite map, Calamity.
Definitely
helps
not.
you survive. Helps you survive in Division 1.
Rewarding, but very stressful.
Yeah, exactly. Very nice. Yeah, very interesting result. And yeah, sometimes as we go through all of these, we'll look at these scores and say, wow, it was a blowout, 2,000-3,000 point difference. But that right there shows you it could really come down to one round where someone just makes a unlucky guess with almost no information, and then one person gets a little bit lucky, and then that's that 5,000 point swing or so right there. So very tough. Moving on to Division 2 and their promotion battle between Renata and Barry Fishy Bear. And I don't know really what to say here. Barry Fishy Bear, maybe a bit nervous coming to this one, at least in terms of the standings, was the underdog. But it looks like Renata just wants to stay in Division 2. Gweilo, she didn't even bother to play.
Yeah, it was surprising when I learned about this. I mean, they've obviously been very good players the entire season. They both beat me. I was very impressed. This is the first time I'm playing against Renata. I was very impressed with her performances. So I was actually looking forward to seeing what happened here, but I guess not this season. We're gonna not this season. We're gonna figure out what happens. So yeah, a bit weird.
Yeah, Barry Fisher score. Bear though, very good scores, 25K, perfect score in Jordan Calamity. And yeah, Renata, what probably we could say missed out on the automatic promotion simply because she forgot to play 1 week earlier in the season, and perhaps forgetting again cost her that promotion.
Yeah, it's a bit strange though, because in the 1 week she forgot to play in week 4, where she would have been up against LCN, so definitely with his score as well not being too great, would have been a chance for her to secure that automatic promotion spot. Obviously at that time she couldn't have known that. But after that, she immediately, like a day after or so, like when, oh, I'm so stupid, I forgot to, I just totally thought I'd already played. But this time I haven't heard anything from her, and it's been 3 days since the deadline. So I don't know what happened to her. We'll see in the coming weeks if she ever mentions something. But yeah, a bit disappointing. Could have been a very cool matchup. So I'm just gonna compare my scores to Barry instead, because it, like, between us two, it was actually very close. I scored about 200 points more in Poland, which was a pretty interesting seed. Where I struggled in round 5, where I had no information that I could make use of. I found a couple town names, but didn't find them on the map. But made a pretty good landscape guess and ended up just 45 kilometers away. And Barry dropped about 2,000 points in round 3, which was sort of in the northwest of the country, sort of a bit in the middle of nowhere, but I did find the towns there. I think I must have also found a one of the sort of national roads that I could use to get relatively close. And then in Jordan was, I'm going to say, very impressive by both of us, where I've 25K'd in 8 minutes 39, and Barry was even 30 seconds quicker. Definitely not the most difficult Jordan seed, but it wasn't that easy either, I think. So definitely very impressive to get just over 8 minutes there. And then we had Europe, where basically, again, different rounds where the mistakes came from, but again, very close. Just 400 points was I better than Barry. I dropped like 2.5K in Italy, in the mountains, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and Barry dropped about 1,800 points in the Netherlands, where I went for Belgium. Okay, it was a pretty unique round, odd round, I guess, in the sense that you were on, like, near one of those, I'm not sure if they're called dams, but, you know, right next to the coast, where it's like slightly upwards so you can't see the coast, but it's kind of obvious you're there. And I guess he just didn't really find any useful information. I mean, language is the same in sort of those parts, so an understandable mistake. And then in round 4, another 1,200 points in sort of northern Spain.
Oh, very nice. Well, congrats to Barry. And yeah, he will be up against you, Calamity, among the others in Division 1 next season. Moving to the relegation matchup at the other end, and 2 very close matches, and then a kind of blowout here with LCN perfect in the Europe seed, and Gweilo, you really struggling in that one. So yeah, give us some insights on these series of matches for you.
A miserable end to a miserable season. Yeah, so the Europe is just as simple as we were in the Azores, and I forgot that the Azores were technically in Europe. So I knew we were on an island. I couldn't quite tell that it was Portuguese. I saw enough signs to know it was either Portuguese or Spanish, but I couldn't quite tell which one. My knowledge is not good enough with a little bit on text. So I guessed on the Spanish islands, which are off the east of Spain instead of in the Azores, and that was the majority of the points. But I wasn't perfect even beyond that. I dropped a couple points in round 2, which was in Belgium, and a couple points in round 5 in Romania, just pinpointing. So I wouldn't have won regardless, but definitely not a great way to start off. The Europe was the first seed I played, and the first round was when I dropped all these points. So it was a poor start, but the next 2 went much better. I played Hard World next and lost by, I think it's like 114 points, which feels a little bad. So I think the difference came, there was a round in the Philippines that was really hard. I thought it was pretty clearly either the Philippines or Indonesia, and I guessed wrongly. And LCN guessed in Ecuador. So I'm not really sure where he got that from. Maybe he just didn't see any text. I saw a bit of text enough to know that it was one of the 2. That was a big difference. But I was still pretty far away in Indonesia, so I didn't really gain. I only gained 600 points over his guess. And then there were a couple of minor differences. I think what ended up making the difference was actually there were a couple. So round 2 is this round in Ghana, where it looked like it was in the north part of the country, kind of in the Sahel region, or I guess kind of close to the Sahel. But I saw a sign that said Accra on it, so I guessed close to Accra, and it turned out we were actually in the north part of the country. So that could have won me the match. It was round 1 as well, which was in Mongolia, but that was just a kind of, it was a very, very high quality road, which is usually close to the capital, and it was not close to the capital. And then there was also a decent difference in round 5, which was in Cambodia, where I was pretty close to an LCN. I guess I saw a mile marker, or I saw a bollard with the number of the road on it in some close by town, so I got pretty close, and LCN didn't. But it feels pretty bad to get this close to staying in Div 2. But it's like I said, I don't think I deserve to stay in Division 2 based on my scores, so I'm fine with this. These are the first 2 seeds I played, and I just played Australia on no practice, just because I knew I'd already lost, and of course I ended up beating him. That's how it goes. Yeah. The differences were in rounds mostly 1 and 5, although I lost out in round 4. So I got a round that was near Brisbane because I think I saw the road number and he didn't. And then there was a kind of a roll round that looked like Western Victoria to me, and it turned out to be in Adelaide, and he guessed near the capital. But yeah, like I said, miserable end to a miserable season. But I think LCN deserved it based on the scores, and obviously at 25K, especially with a round as hard as the Azores, there wasn't really any information, so I'm not really sure how he managed to pinpoint that. That's very impressive.
Yeah, Calamity, definitely Australia and Hard World living up to their reputations there, both of them in that 15, 16,000 mark. And then Europe really separating them. That, yeah, the limits of maps are always the fun thing.
Yeah, I've definitely had my fair share of, I think for me it was actually Africa and the Spanish islands, the Canaries, where I once just completely forgot they were part of them. And yeah, it's definitely interesting. I can't really say too much about the Hard World seed, because at that point I was so sick of trying to create playable maps, playable seeds on that map, because just like half of the locations are just either not really suitable or just broken. I can tell you, the Gweilowizard, that there was, if you went north and then slightly east from the starting location in the Azores, there was a sort of a government sign that said Governo dos Açores, and even gave you the town Santa Barbara, which was what I found relatively quickly.
Okay.
So I 25K'd that seed as well in Europe in 8 minutes, which was my personal best, actually. Probably got a bit lucky as well, though, with directions I went, etc. You always kind of have to be a bit if you want to get sort of a personal best in that. But LCN took about 2.5, 3 minutes longer than that, but also still very good performance by him. And yeah, in the hardball, so for the hardball seed, I just clicked through them. Mongolia definitely, well, you do sort of get mountainous areas north of Ulaanbaatar as well. You wouldn't see locations that are that dry in the northern, sort of northeastern part of the country. That's one part where you could have potentially gone in a better direction there. Yeah, so I can't really talk too much about the rest of the seed because I didn't really play it. But yeah, very close stats. And then for Australia, I just didn't really have a lot of fun with that seed. I've scored like 10k points. And yeah, pretty difficult seed, I would say, for Australia. And again, very, very close. There were a couple of people like Carp and Baseman played that seed as well, and neither of them scored more than Gweilowizard did. So very, very difficult seed. And overall, just a bit unfortunate that it came down to such close margins. And I guess a deserved win for LCN there with the big win in Europe.
Yeah, very nice. So yeah, Gweilowizard, you'll be joining Division 3 next season. So a bunch of new competitors to face there. And we'll move over then, to that new division of yours, Division 3. And Division 3, I will say, lived up to its name in the sense that we had lots of 3-0s. In this case, for the promotion battle, we had Boobot beating Steal This Nick on every single round.
Yep. Decisive victory, although none of the margins weren't too bad. I didn't play the seed, so I don't know too much about exactly where these differences come from. But still, this Nick clearly putting up a good fight in each of the rounds, just failing in all 3 of them. So that's got to feel a little bad to be so close, but kind of so far at the same time. But he's clearly a very good player. So another chance next season.
Yeah, Calamity did take him a couple of tries to get out of Division 4, and look like it'll have to take a couple of tries to get out of Division 3 as well.
Yeah, he was overall he was almost in shock he even made it to the promotion playoff final in the first place, and he definitely put up a very good fight. I feel like out of all the matchups, this one might even be the closest, even though it ended in 3-0, but all of the scores were very close on the maps. And in Poland, it was mostly round 1 where he dropped 370 points. So that was the difference there, which was around in the northwest of Łódź, which is generally it's a big city in Poland. All big cities in Poland can be a bit rough sometimes. So just couldn't quite get the right location there. Boobot didn't manage to pinpoint it either, but significantly closer there. And then in Jordan, they both lost a lot of points in round 3, which was in sort of the central part of the country on an interesting stretch of road in the town called Raba, which I haven't actually seen myself before either. So I couldn't get that myself. But Steal This Nick actually did, while they both dropped a lot of points, Steal This Nick got a few more here, 300, but he dropped another 600 points in round 1 in central Amman, unfortunately, which can always be tough to pinpoint as well. But Boobot managed to do it, and Steal This Nick just under 5 kilometers away, unfortunately losing that seed there. And then in Europe, again, not too far apart from each other. Just Steal This Nick dropped a few more points in a few more rounds. Main points drop came from round 5, which was in sort of the very southern part of Croatia, where I didn't really find anything useful. Neither did anyone else who played that seed, and Boobot was about 700 points closer. And Steal This Nick also dropped about 300 points in round 1 in sort of southeastern Belgium. Which was actually a fairly easy round, but maybe if you're not too familiar with the area, I can see it. And then Steal This Nick made back those 300 points, though, in round 3 again, where they were in southern Italy, near Potenza. Then it was mainly just round 5 where the difference came from.
Well, yeah, congrats to Boobot moving up to Division 3, and better luck next time, Steal This Nick. Next season in Division 3. At the other end, Pashtek also came out 3-0 against Seppo. This was probably a pretty hard one to call going into this Guelo. And unfortunately for Seppo, again, kind of like Steal This Nick, putting up some very good scores, but just falling short on every single one.
Yeah, pretty similar actually. I think the seeds are Poland instead of Hard World, but the similar maps and similar tightness of scores. Although Pastek had a couple thousand in Jordan, but Hard World and Europe both very close, which I guess we should expect. Again, these are both very good players. Yeah, it hurts to be so close, and you only need to win 2 seeds. Seppo could have just totally flunked on Jordan and still won with a couple hundred points more in both the other 2. Good luck to Pastek in Div 3 and to Seppo in Div 4. Good scores.
Yeah, Clemmy, definitely not a season to remember for Seppo. It didn't really ever get started. Pastek had a few glimpses of what he might be able to do, but just not practicing as much as he probably should have. Saw him down there, and fortunately, a second crack at these maps means he can stay up.
Funnily, I actually think it's kind of the opposite, where Seppo had those glimpses of good performances in some of the weeks, and Pastek never really got great performances together. He had a few good games where he just ended up not quite getting it over the line. But this playoff match was actually really cool. Pastek streamed it on his Twitch channel, and it was very exciting to watch. He started. What did he start with? I think I don't actually remember what he started with. I know he played Hard World last, but I can't remember if he started with Europe or Jordan. I think he started with Europe, where both of them started off relatively well, 5Ks in the first round, then Seppo dropped 100 points in round 2 in Belgium. And then round 3 came in Slovakia, which was a super weird round. You basically started off next to a town entrance sign that gave you basically 2 different town entrance signs. And
Enjoy.
one of the town entrance signs style was something that I've only ever seen in Austria, which was very interesting. The other one was a very typical sort of Slovakian or Czechian style sign. Obviously Slovakian because it was in Slovakia, but Czechia has a very similar type of town entrance sign. And you could find some Hungarian in the town as well, which Pastek actually did see on a sign, but just it apparently didn't quite click for him, and maybe didn't realize that. So in the end, he went with Czechia, and Seppo did go with Slovakia near the Hungarian border, just not particularly close, but still much closer than Pastek. So Pastek dropped about 1,300 points there. And then round 4 came in Norway, where Pastek just went the right direction, I suppose, for long enough, because he found signs that I didn't, which told him the road number, which, while it doesn't show up on a map, the road number in Norway does give you the general location. And he then did end up finding some of the smaller towns. And Seppo, unfortunately, could not quite get any information, I suppose, and dropped 1,500 points back, which was 200 points more than he'd gained in the previous round. And that left the door closed, essentially, as they both pretty much got a very similar score in round 5, which was just outside of Zagreb in Croatia, where neither of them got particularly close, 8.8 and 9 kilometers away, but also on complete opposite ends of the town. But yeah, still very similar points. Pastek got a point more. And then they went to Jordan, which was also super interesting, where Pastek immediately in round 1, which was in Amman again, kind of a pattern there, Amman proving difficult for some people, dropped about 1,000 points. Seppo only dropped 40, which put Seppo in the lead again. And then in round 2, Pastek made up about 100 points in sort of the, again, central part of the country, sort of southeast and central part, I want to say, on a pretty empty highway, just slightly better in pinpointing. And then came round 3, just very, not too far, but just very slightly further north on the same road. I mean, I say not too far, like 50 kilometers or something, where Pastek got very, very close, and Seppo dropped 1,200 points, which now put it back into Pastek's favor. Then round 3, another 100 points made up by Seppo, just a bit further south in the country, where Pastek spent about, I don't know, 2 minutes not managing to pinpoint a fairly easy pinpointable location. But, yep. And then round 5, so had both people still very, very close to each other. I think they were a few 100 points separated at this point. And neither of them really managed to figure out where they were. It was, again, a super difficult and confusing round north of Amman on a highway there, which had, like, it had interesting signs that you couldn't quite get the information you needed out of, apparently. And so I don't know what Seppo was thinking, essentially, obviously, but Pastek, right until the end, really didn't know where he was, and just ended up much, much closer. Seppo going to the south of Amman. And Pastek essentially only was about 500 meters away, getting very, very close there. And yeah, that put it back in his favor, and decided the match. And yeah, then he just played through the hard world seed, relatively chilled out, didn't really concentrate too much on it. Did end up winning that as well, just by about 300 points. Was a very Southeast Asian heavy seed with Cambodia, Philippines, Thailand, and Bangladesh. And that was mostly decided by the Philippines round, where Pastek, knowing the Philippine provinces, helped him get the right area, and Seppo, with just a hedge in the middle of the country, lost 1,400 points, 1,500 actually, and that decided the last map in Pastek's favor as well.
Yeah, it's not much of a hard world, more like hard Southeast Asia. For that one, but yeah, so maybe Seppo will have a bit better luck in Division 4. Definitely can get some good scores in that Division 3 kind of format, so we could definitely see him returning after only one season. And maybe after this bit of a scare, Pastek will practice a little bit more and put a little bit more effort into it. Maybe he doesn't have to face this relegation playoff again next season. Well, moving over to Division 4 and their promotion battle, and it is Nakiro who takes it after many a season in Division 4, finally gets his own shot at Division 3. And Carp, after a brilliant, unbelievable start to the season, some would say, kind of fell off towards the end and was unable to recover any real form in this battle. And yeah, his score in Canada, probably not what he would have wanted in this one. Gweilo.
Yeah, Nakiro, being French, performing better on the English-speaking maps than his American opponent. But if it works, it works. These scores are very high for Australia, so it must have been a decent seed. I guess I'll see what you say in a second, Calamity. But good performance. Again, the with the exception of Australia, the gap between their scores is pretty large in both Europe and Canada. But that's pretty easy to happen on Canada if you just mistake, parts of New Brunswick and Vancouver can look very similar. So that sort of mistake can happen. But yeah, I guess Nakiro just clicked on those 2 rounds, and so he'll stay in Division 4 for next season. Well done.
He'll get promoted to Division 3.
Oh yes, sorry.
Yeah, this is our promotion.
Even better.
Yeah, even better. Exactly. Yeah, Calamity Carp looked like he was going to have to only spend one season in Division 4, brand new competitor in Reddit League, but he'll have to spend at least one more season here.
Yeah, a very good performance from Nakiro generally, if we exclude the Europe seed, which wasn't particularly good, but a very strong performance in Canada, especially, where he had the best score on the seed by far. A very Alberta heavy seed with 3 rounds there, which was kind of Carp's undoing. I mean, he was like 10,000 points away from Nakiro, so it wasn't just that. But there was one round in Alberta where he said BC and New Brunswick look very similar to Alberta, and far northern Northwest Territories also look very similar, because that's where he went for that one. And yeah, another one where he went for Saskatchewan instead of Alberta, which cost him another few thousand points, and then slightly too far north in a Quebec round, another 1,000 points or so lost there. So overall, just a much better performance in Canada by Nakiro. In Australia and Europe, neither of them did super well. I mean, they both did well, at least in Australia, they both did decently. Both lost to me, of course. Very important to mention. No, they dropped quite a few points in round one. With Nakuro dropping 2,000 points and Carp 1,000 points and Carp dropping a bit over 2,000 points, which was a round in sort of southern Victoria, just east of Melbourne, near Warragul, where I can't actually remember what I found, but I realized it wasn't an easy round. Might have been the road number potentially. And then they did pretty well. Another 800 points dropped compared to Nakuro in round 3, which was again a pretty difficult round on a random highway through New South Wales, where I just found the right road because I just looked for the name of the highway and zoomed in on random highways and ended up finding it. But it was still a very long highway, so difficult to get quite right because I didn't really see any signs towards other towns or cities either. And just slightly closer there for Nakuro. And then Carp did attempt to come back in the last 2 rounds where he made up 300 and 400 points each in Western Australia and the Northern Territory, but it just was too little too late, and Nakuro 1,300 points ahead on that one. And then Europe, which was a pretty interesting seed, actually. I managed to 25k it, but it was definitely a pretty hard seed. And Carp doing a decent job. Essentially 4 perfect rounds. He dropped 2 points in one of them. And then 2,500 points dropped in Greece, on the island of Kos, or Kos, I don't quite know. I think it's Kos. Where Nakuro also dropped 1,900 points, but Nakuro then went on and in round 3, which was northeastern Spain, dropped another 2,100 points by going sort of near Bilbao in the Basque region. And then in round 4, another 700 points lost in Ireland, which just meant that he was about 2,200 points away on that one.
So finally, Nakuro moving up in this one. So congrats to him. Moving on to the other side of Division 4 and their relegation match. And it was a sweeping win, 3-0 for Wakelok against Treblyha. And yeah, probably not what we would have expected in this one, Gweilo. Both of them obviously not doing the best this season, but Treblyha not even able to catch one game. If you look at these score differences, it was pretty significant in each one of them as well.
Yeah, they're not small. Nearly perfect on Jordan for Wakelok as well. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about Trebla, but it does make me happy to see Wakelok staying in Division 4. I think he was in Division 3 the season I started playing. So that's good to see. But yeah, these are not close. It must have been some interesting seeds.
Yeah, Calamity Wakelok scores were pretty close to his regular season scores on these maps. I know we can't compare them because obviously the seeds are very different, but he was in the general vicinity of his scores at least, and Treblyha was way off. So definitely a big difference from the regular season to these.
Yeah, the Poland seed was actually very difficult. Wakelok managed to come close to a 5k or 5k, so a couple points dropped, but not too much in 4 of the rounds, and dropped about 3,500 points in round 2, which was sort of on the outskirts, far outskirts, but still sort of close to Katowice. Interestingly, where Treblyha did the same I did and dropped pretty much all of her points in rounds 3 and 4, which came after that. Round 3 was in the far north of the country, sort of northwest, near Koszalin, sort of pretty close to the ocean, but not quite yet, where I couldn't find much information there. And I found the town name, and I think I found a phone number. I may have just not quite revised the phone numbers enough at that point to get in the exact right area, where she dropped a good 3,000 points there. And then So at that point, she also dropped 700 points in a round, with where Wakelock dropped most of his points. So at that point, it was still close, but then round 4, in the far southwest near Klotsko, which is usually an area I can tell relatively well, but also can look somewhat similar to the far southeast. Yeah, Trebly had dropped another 4,400 points there, and Wakelock got almost a perfect score. So that pretty much decided the game. And the other 2 seeds were actually not too difficult in Jordan and Europe. In Jordan, Trebly had just dropped 2,500 points in round 5, right at the end, in sort of the south of Madaba. On the main highway, though, so again, not too difficult of a round. Wakelock had no problems with the whole seed. Essentially dropped 32 points in round 3, which was just north of Jerash, which was a very easy round to figure out, where you are generally, but that far north can be very hard to pinpoint, just because you're so far away from any road that would have a name or anything really. And then the European seed saw Wakelock drop about 2,900 points in round 2 in Slovakia, where he went for northwestern Slovenia. But to his good luck, I suppose, Trebly went even further west and went with France. It was a fairly difficult round. I myself couldn't find more than a town name that, could have obviously told you you're in Slovakia, or at least Slovakia or Czechia. So I don't know what they saw. Maybe nothing at all. But yeah, so not an easy round. That already put Trebly on the back foot. Wakelock did leave the option to come back for her. She had also already dropped about 1,800 points in, 1,100 points in round 1, which was in the far north of Scotland, on the Orkney Islands. And I still think it would have potentially been possible had she gotten the perfect score in round 5, which was in northern Portugal, where Wakelock dropped 1,800 points, but she unfortunately also dropped 1,500 by way of them both going too far south in the center of the country. And that just meant that, no more options to come back on that one.
A bit unfortunate, but a newcomer to Reddit League, so a season in Division 5 won't be nothing to worry about, and Wakelock will be definitely happy to survive a challenge, not having to worry about dropping any further. Moving to that Division 5, our last one, and their battles. And in the promotion battle, it is Ollie who comes out on top of Jack ES. In this one, very, very close games. But then Jordan, quite the opposite. Gweilo.
Yeah, some good scores from Ollie, especially in Jordan, where it can be very hard to pinpoint some rounds. Anything close to 25 is excellent. But yeah, incredibly close in Poland. That must it must feel bad to beat Jack and lose the promotion by 2 points. But it's still a very impressive score in Poland. I banned Poland for mine because I didn't want to play it. Poland just doesn't work for me for some reason. So both of these scores are very impressive. But almost equally, well, not quite as close, but still very close in Russia as well, with Jack taking it by a couple hundred points. But very good performances as well. 15,000 is a normal score for Russia. So, but best of luck to Ollie in Division 4.
Exactly. Yeah, Calamity. I think I at least had some interesting expectations for Jack coming into this. He's a newcomer to Reddit League, but we've seen him in lots of other competition. He does quite well, but just unfortunate, not well enough to get out of the lowest division this time around.
Yeah, it was actually the Poland seed was very easy. Pretty much everyone who played the seed, which was 5 different people, all got above 24,994 or equal to it. It was just round 5 essentially for both of them, where it just came down to you're on a straight road, you're somewhere on it. You had basically a side road to the north and the south to try and get closer, but it certainly wasn't easy to get the right point. And Ollie was just a little bit closer in that one, so a bit unfortunate for Jack. then in Jordan, let's actually talk about Russia first, because that was still close. Very difficult seed as usual in Russia. Both of them dropped a lot of points in round 1, where Jack only got 500 and Ollie got 1,000 points, which was sort of in very central Russia, just north of Yekaterinburg. Pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Like, you have to zoom in pretty far to even see a road show up. And apparently neither of them getting much information there. And then another 900 points dropped by Jack in round 2, which was sort of in the southern part near Volgodonsk, which Ollie managed to get a perfect score on. 2 points dropped by Ollie in round 3 didn't really matter much. And then another round where a lot of points went missing in round 4, where Jack got 1,000 points in sort of the almost already Siberian part of Russia near Nizhnevartovsk, where Ollie got 188 points and Jack got 1,000, which put Jack still behind Ollie, but much closer again, which allowed the comeback on the last round, round 5. Again, pretty not that rural actually, but still, not anywhere very urban. In sort of the midway point between Nizhny Novgorod and Kazan, where Jack got 4,937 and Ollie only got 4,217, which meant that Jack came back on the last round to win Russia. But unfortunately, it was all for naught, with Jordan going very clearly in Ollie's favor. Again, not the most difficult seed. Ollie pretty much only dropped points in round 3, which was sort of to the southwest of Amman. Actually pretty close to a round that the Division 2 seed back in the regular season had in Jordan. And Jack just not quite on the same level there in that whole seed. He dropped about 3,000 points in that round 2. Dropped another 3,000 points in round 1 to begin with, which was actually pretty close to where the Division 3 relegation playoff seed had a round. So if they'd played that seed, they might have gotten closer to that. And then another 1,000 points in round 5 as well, which was again on the same road, but again about 100 kilometer, 50 maybe, further north. Just a clear win in that one for Ollie, and it could have gone another way, definitely with Poland as well. But this is a game that could have easily ended up either 3-0 for Ollie or 2-1 for Jack. But I think with how dominant Jordan was for Ollie, I think it's still a deserved win.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a Geoguessr kind of game. Straight roads where you're got to guess with no real help at all, and being 1 or 2 meters off, costing you a few points and possibly the game. Things like that, as well as just difficult rounds in some very difficult countries. So maybe an appropriate conclusion to Division 5 promotion. But yeah, congrats to Ollie, and we'll see you next season in Division 4. And finally, at the bottom end of Division 5, people looking to not have to re-qualify for Reddit League, and Soundbite on his second time of asking will survive, taking a 2-1 win over No. Pretty close again in 2 of these, but coming down to a big difference in Australia for Soundbite's favor there, Gweilo.
Yeah, so the opposite of earlier, where the English-speaking player wins both English-speaking maps. So Soundbite won in Australia and Canada, and then No won in Europe. So I guess makes a little bit more sense in this case, but good performances. I guess Europe is a easier than average map to get close to 25K, and they both did. Although No coming out a little bit on top from both, but then a pretty dominant performance in Australia for Soundbite. I guess we'll see how easy the seed was, but No has a very normal score for Australia, and then Soundbite has a very high one. So it must have been a mixed seed with some directional stuff, and maybe he went one direction and found something, and No didn't. But that enough is a pretty dominant performance, which definitely earns his spot in Division 5. With pretty close in the other 2. And best of luck to both of them, and especially with No as he qualifies next season.
Yeah, Clemmy, we haven't been talking about it too much, but was Australia Soundbite's map pick? Or
Well,
do
you
you
don't
remember?
really pick maps, you ban maps.
Oh, that's right. We
And
just did bans. That was
yeah,
right.
but Soundbite generally has always felt pretty comfortable in Australia. He's also picked it quite a lot in the Map Battle League last season. So we kind of knew that he would do pretty well on that. The seed, I honestly can't tell you too much about it because that was the one other map that I really couldn't be bothered to create seeds anymore after a certain point. So yeah, I played the first round and then just clicked through it. Funnily enough, did much better on the other 4 rounds that I just clicked through in like 20 seconds rather than the first round. So like even spending just 5 minutes on the seed, I got 17k. So I don't know, just not doing too well on that one. Dropped 4,700 points in round 1, which was in far western Australia, near the coast, but I don't think you could actually see the coast anywhere. At least I don't remember seeing it. And then another 4,100 points dropped in round 2 for Anonono, which was in sort of northern Tasmania, where he guessed near Adelaide, slightly northwest of it. And that pretty much decided it. He did good in the other 3 rounds, just dropping 1 more point, but at this point it was already decided for Soundbite, who only dropped 3 points in the first 4 rounds. Then didn't do too well in the last round, which was near Catherine in the Northern Territories, where he dropped 1,200 points, but obviously after Anono's bad first 2 rounds, there's no way he could lose that anymore. Could have just not guessed at all in the last round and would have still been fine. The other 2 maps a lot closer. The Europe seed wasn't particularly hard. There was one not so easy round for me, which was in a sort of national park north of Madrid, which they actually both almost managed to 5k. No, did. Soundbite dropped 3 points. Soundbite had his main problems come from round 1 and 4, which were in the Netherlands, sort of, again, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. It's like slightly north of Apeldoorn. But in sort of, again, not necessarily a park, but those typical like Dutch rural areas where like there's a lot of trees here. There's not much else, a few canals maybe. And then his round 4, where he dropped another 700 points, 700 points, was in central Denmark. Again, pretty much middle of nowhere a bit there. Don't quite remember what I found there, but I don't know. Dropped 500 points in that one too. And Anonono dropped 300 points in round 2. So apparently all rounds in this one had potential to drop some points. Round 2 was in Kalamata in Greece. And then, yeah, round 5, not a lot of trouble there. Both dropping a few points in Belgium, but not actually northern. No, it was Belgium. Very close to the border to France. That not deciding too much, which in the end just about leaves Anonono ahead. But that, yeah, as I said, the seed had the potential to go either way in quite a few of these rounds. And then to finish us off, Canada, which again wasn't too difficult of a seed. They both finished with the lowest scores of the people who attempted the seed. And mainly coming down to round 2 here, where Soundbite got 1 point, which actually, as Gweilowizard said earlier, New Brunswick and BC can look very similar. Well, we're getting close. The round was in Nova Scotia, and Soundbite guessed in BC. So, yep, that's quite far away, 4,600 kilometers. But Anonono also quite far off. He went with Newfoundland and Labrador, but actually I've never really had to think about that, but I feel like that would then have to be the Labrador part, which definitely does not have coverage, but yeah, a bit closer, 900 points for him, but also still very far away. And then round 3 and 4, unfortunately for Anonono, ended his chances, where he dropped 2,000 points more than Soundbite in round 3, which was in Alberta, actually pretty close to some of the Alberta rounds we had in the seed between Nakro and Carp, I think. And then another 400 points dropped in round 4, which was actually for real in New Brunswick this time. And then Anonono almost came back in the last round, made up 1,000 points to Soundbite in a round in sort of southern Quebec, east of Sherbrooke, but just not quite enough and still behind by 300 points at the end.
Yeah, so Canada can be quite tricky. That East and West Coast caught a few of our players across all these different maps off guard a bit. Made things interesting for sure. But yeah, congratulations to Soundbite for surviving your second try in Reddit League. So we'll be looking forward to seeing what you can do next season. So definitely practice in that off season. Yeah, well, that's it. And there's nothing else to talk about. Lots of interesting matchups and how they went. We've got, I think, a couple of these matchups. We're going to try to bring you the best of three. So we're actually going to try to show you all three of those games. So if you want to see how it actually unfolded round by round, Calamity gave lots of detail, of course, here, but it's always nice to see those. So hit that subscribe button so you won't miss when those videos come up in the following week. And we will catch you next time to talk about how the championship final played out. And we will go into plenty of detail then. So it won't be a short show, to say the least. And yeah, we'll see you all then. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.